Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast, where we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership, and so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find ideas to help all of us be better leaders. Our great coach on this episode is Ante Milicic. Ante is an Australian soccer coach and former professional player. As a player, he represented Australia and won national championships, as well as being the first player to score a hat-trick in the Australian A-League. After retiring, he moved into coaching straight away, becoming player coach for Sydney United in 2009. At the same time, he became an assistant coach for the Australian under-20 team. From there, he was an assistant coach to Ange P at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil and the 25 victorious Asian Cup team, as well as being an assistant to Bert Van Marjwick at the 2018 World Cup in Russia. In 2019, he was appointed as the Australian women's national coach and led them to the round of 16 at the World Cup. In 2020, he was then named the inaugural head coach for the new National League men's team, Macarthur. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. The program bridges the gap between theory and real-world application, bringing together world-leading professors, executives and industry partners to teach you how business can be used for good. I have just started working with the team at Macquarie on some projects and can attest to the quality of the people and material. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now, please enjoy our interview with Ante Milicic.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Ante Milicic, hello, good evening my time, good morning your time, and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Good evening for you over there in beautiful Australia, and thanks for having me on your show.
Could I start with a question whose answer I know is going to make me a little bit jealous, but where are you in the world and what have you been up to so far today?
Okay, so I'm in Zagreb, Croatia, which of course is the capital. It's getting cold now. The snow is starting to fall, and we're getting ready for a beautiful white Christmas and Advent, which is very popular here in Zagreb. So I'm looking forward to that, and still doing a bit of work with football, and I'm involved with a bit of consultancy work with a few clubs here. So ticking over at a nice tempo and enjoying myself.
Well, I look forward to talking to you a little bit more about Zagreb off air afterwards. One of my favourite cities in Europe for sure, especially in summer. I don't know what it's like in winter, but summer's always pretty good. And then, of course, it's a great sporting nation. We've seen them, perform so well in the Soccer World Cup and water polo as well. But I'm sure we'll get into that as we go along. Ante, could I start by just asking you about some of the coaches you've had experience with? There's a couple of big names in there. There's Tony Popovic, there's Ange P, and there's Bert Van Marjwick, who I don't know as well, but having read his background, I can see that he's very well credentialed. And I'm just intrigued to start by asking you, having watched these people up close and the many others that you've coached against, what is it you think the great ones do differently that sets them apart?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to work with not only good coaches but good people, and I think for all young coaches they get into the industry, I think it's very important who you work under. And when I look at that list, I'd also add to that list John Van Schip, who's the current coach of Ajax now as well. And there was another gentleman who coached our young Socceroos, Jan Verschlein. I did 2 World Youth Cups with him, who was also a very good coach. When you ask what sets them apart, I mean, they're all different individuals, obviously, but what really stands out to me is that the standards that they have and the consistency that comes with that. So, it's how you present yourself and you conduct yourself and you run, the organisation every day through not only your words but your actions. And it sounds basic enough, but to be able to do that day in, day out, consistently at a higher level, I think that's what really makes the great coaches what they are. And just to touch on it a little bit, you look at I've been fortunate to go to a couple of World Cups, but the teams that win the World Cup, I look at them a little bit different to the ones that get eliminated early. And I'm not putting performance to one side, but you need to be away from home for 45 days, sometimes without seeing your family, breakfast, lunch and dinner together as a team, video reviews, previews, pressure, expectations, media. Now, that's where it comes back to those consistency in the high standards. You've got to maintain that every day, and the great coaches can do that. And there's no drop off. You can't afford to have it at that top level. And so when you talk about those coaches, that's what really stands out to me.
Well, from the great coaches, let's rewind to the start. Well, not quite the start, but you grew up in Sydney's West to parents who immigrated to Australia, and I'm wondering. I know that would have been a challenging experience back then, and equally a fun experience as well. But I'm wondering how that experience is visible today in the way that you lead teams.
Yeah, well, I think you link a lot of your way of working to your upbringing, or I certainly did. And then when you mention, the immigrant parents, so you take that into your coaching, and so the minimum expectations then is hard work, because you see what your parents went through. And when I look back, and as you're older now, you understand a little bit more about their life and their reason to come to Australia. And I just look at the basic one of my father, traveling 32 days on a boat to get to Australia, to a country where he'd had no money, no friends, no relatives, didn't know the language. But you know what? He just got on with it, and he worked every day. And I wouldn't see him in the mornings when I wake up because he was at work, and he'd come home at 6 o'clock at night and have dinner and then basically fall asleep on the couch that exhausted. So you bring that into the way. Well, I certainly did in the way I approach things. So that you talk about hard work, but you've got to do everything for your family, and your team and your club becomes your family. You want to give them the best. That's why you become a coach. You want to help your players, help your staff. You want to improve them. You want them to enjoy the benefits of the work that you put in. So I'll relate my parents and my upbringing to what I bring into the organisation that I work with.
This idea of hard work, it flows through your story, as we'll see as we progress through the interview. But I have got an interesting quote from you that I'd like to play back to you before I ask the question. It's about your time as a player, and you said, "I don't have so many regrets, but I thought definitely for the talent I had, I probably should have made a little bit more of my career." And it's an interesting one, because what I'd like to ask you is, how do you now go about working with people today who are potentially not realising their potential like you are saying that you did?
And how common is it? I still see it now all the time. So many good players, whether that you've worked with them or coached against them, or you've followed their careers, or particularly when you work in those younger age groups like those World Youth Cups, those under-19 players, where do their careers go and why? And, I think now even also you're a lot more accessible to that kind of information. I know that there's a popular clip on social media with Jose Mourinho and Dele Alli talking about how quickly your career goes and how time flies, and you want to make the most of it because you give your whole, or to play at a high level, you're giving your whole childhood to football, and are your family that's committed to the career, and then once it turns to professional, it's how do you get the most of it? So, look, I would definitely say, in terms of my own experience and now looking back at it, yeah, I thought I could have done a lot more. And you look at everyone's individual journey and where things could have maybe been better. I think the big one is who you surround yourself with, having a mentor, not only getting good advice, but actually acting on that advice. And what are your motivations to succeed? I look at my own story, and I grew up, at 16, going through the AIS program in Canberra, where there was only 18 players in the whole Australia chosen to go there. And the 91 World Youth Cup in Portugal, where Australia got to the semi-finals, was such a motivation for me to play in 2 years' time in the 93 World Youth Cup. And I was so focused on that tournament that I would do whatever it took to get there. And that's why I look at sort of my own individual story. In 91, my mother passed away, and I just turned 17, and my mum died with cancer. So it was a sort of a drawn out death, unfortunately. But I had so much in me to perform at that 93 World Cup, which I did well individually, also as a team, because we made the semi-final. And probably where I get that comment from is that after that, I had a big dip. And I think a lot of it has to do with being mentally strong enough, focused, the people around me. I had opportunities to go to Europe, coming from Australia where it's semi-professional and hot, going to Europe where it's cold and snowy and it's, 6-7 sessions a day. I wasn't built to withstand that. And then my own career took a dip from 19 to 22. Didn't make the Australian Olympic team in Atlanta 96, and then that's what triggered me. So that's what triggered me when I knew I should have been in that team, or I was good enough to get into it. And then I had that one season after that 97 season where I played really well, and then I got a move to Holland on the back of that. So again, it's what's the motivating factor. Everyone's different, their backgrounds, who's around them. How can we help them to succeed? And so as a coach, if you can get through to those individuals, because they're a specific type of players, and there are a lot of them, is can you make a difference? Can you help them out with your advice and steer them in the right direction? But, with the game and what's involved with it today, it's a lot more difficult, I feel.
I want to get into this idea of connecting with athletes, players, people, because you've coached at youth level, you've coached men, you've coached women, you've played in the Netherlands, Croatia, Malaysia, Australia, and you've coached Australian teams all over the world. Now you're living in Croatia. I'm really intrigued to understand what you've learned about effective communication from this very global and international journey.
Yeah, well, the especially when you're traveling abroad and you're a foreigner in their country, it's about, understanding their culture, and I think you can do that through various ways, and to be accepted or to fit in or to excel in your role is where you have to have that effective communications with the local people, and whether that be the club or people connected with the club, or just the local community. I think that gives you a better chance of having an enjoyable experience. And I definitely found that through my time in Malaysia and Holland. And to this day, I've kept a lot of those relationships open. And I think that's a big part of it too, the experiences that we have along this journey. And you look back at them with fondness. But again, it's that, getting to understand that you're living in their country and how can you be very open-minded to, the way it operates.
This open-mindedness, it's another facet of your story. People reference how calm you are and how non-reactive to situations you are. And I'm fascinated about it, but I'd like to look at it through the lens of elite competition if I could, because I think it's okay. It's one way to be that during day-to-day weekly competitions, but you've actually been to World Cups for men and for the women, and you've helped teams prepare. And I'm really intrigued. Does that preparation change at elite competition level, or is it exactly the same?
I look at it as being funny enough, as an aeroplane pilot. You need to be calm, in control, and make the right decisions, because you're looking after so many people in the organisation or that you're working with. So that calmness, it comes a lot through obviously experience, but I think that gives the players confidence as well, that they can see or feel your reaction to certain situations. But I also link it back to, by being calm, at least on the exterior, it also assists my concentration a lot, particularly when a game's going on. That calmness can make you make better informed decisions. So I'm not really one to carry on and protest with opposition players or with referees or fourth officials or media. A lot of that comes through your preparation that you've done, and it has to be at a higher level to give you that opportunity of calmness. And I actually just feel that it gives the players that security that they need to make their job a lot easier to execute.
Was it always that way, Ante, or did it evolve as you moved along?
It evolves, because where does that come? I mean, if you look how you coach at the start of your career to now, it's different. So a lot of it comes through experience. And again, that's what I refer back to, particularly when you're a young coach. There's so many different parts of the game that you need to learn. But when you can be around good coaches, work with good coaches, learn, pick up things, travel, that's where you build it. So put it this way, there's a big difference if you work under a particular coach for 1 year compared to another one that you work with 5 years. You might pick up more off that one that you worked with 1 year than the other one for 5 years. It depends what you're after and what the level is. Like I worked with Ange P for 4 years. After working with him, that I'll always say that's my PhD. I feel that prepared and confident to pretty much take any job, because that's that level that I've seen, that I've been able to witness, that I understand the situations that arise. You just go through that apprenticeship, your career, and that it evolves. Because of course, when I started, I wasn't like that, but now over time you build your own sort of profile as a coach.
We've interviewed Anson Dorrance on the podcast, the American coach that led the women to the World Cup, the USA women to the World Cup. And he had this fascinating idea. He's like you, he's coached men and women. And he said, he said men have to perform to feel like they belong, but women need to feel like they belong in order to perform. And I don't know whether you agree with it, but it's an intriguing idea. And I wanted to ask you what you've learned about the power of belonging over your playing and coaching career.
Well, it's a good statement, because that positive connection with the females is paramount, and I think the best way I'll put up the differences. And when I was appointed the coach of Matilda's, I also sought advice of other coaches that had worked with males and females to say the differences. But I mean, how could I sum this up? So, working with the men, with the Socceroos, you go 15 hours on the laptop. Working with the girls, it's 15 lattes, a day. It's different. They want that understanding. They want to belong. They want to know a little bit about the background. Where do they see this thing? Are they all together? Where I felt with the men, it was a lot more individual. It's all about how to be ready for my training session and match day. I'll never forget 2014 in Brazil. Tim Cahill came up to me, I think 10 days before the first game, and he just said, I just want to know, how am I going to score against Chile? That was it. So I went away and went through, clips, everything, and I actually put together a presentation to him, how he could get in a position to, score a goal against Chile. Whereas with the girls, it's different. They have to be comfortable with where they are together as a group, and the dynamics are different. But I always worked off the football's the most important part. So in the end, the game's the same, the rules are the same, and that's a lot of what I went through. But really, really, really enjoyed both the experience. And I guess as a coach, when I first got into coaching, I never really said to myself, I want to do males or females or seniors or juniors. I was really, really open to it all and to what opportunity came. And I'm glad and I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to work with these different age groups of both males and females, because it made me a better coach and it made me a better person, because there's a lot more understanding that goes involved in it.
And I talk about the place where you may have used some of this understanding then, when that's at Macarthur FC in Australia's A-League, because you were the inaugural coach. And I'm interested, Ante, to learn what that experience taught you about setting up new team cultures from scratch.
Yeah, and it's a difficult one, because it's a startup club, and okay, you're the head coach. You've got limited facilities, limited resources. You need 23 players. You've got to bring in 9 staff. How do you attract the players to Macarthur when, a player that wants to come to Australia and Sydney in particular will first look at Sydney FC or Wanderers as 2 bigger clubs, more established? So you talk about the culture. It's about, for me, culture simply put, having good people in and around the football club in all areas. Okay, so not just the dressing room, but that's from the groundsman to the front office to the staff, because culture gets built by stairs, and it can get broken down in a minute. So I found it difficult initially to sign the type of footballers that I wanted for, as I said, those reasons. I was fortunate enough that I fell back on all the years I worked with the Australian national team, and I had a lot of former Socceroos that said that they'll come to Macarthur in the inaugural season. So I was getting players that were past their best. However, as professionals, that made up for it. So a lot of former Socceroos said, "Yeah, I'll come, Ante, and I'll be part of your new club." And I'm thankful for like your Ivan Franiches, your Mark Milligans, your Tommy Orrs, your Adam Federici. Again, all in their mid-30s, but they came. So I sacrificed a little bit about my style of football, but I knew, with players like Millsy and Tommy, or I knew that the dressing room was on remote control. I knew that voice was the right one, and the message would be relaying how I wanted things to go. And I also thought that with the younger ones that I was be able to bring into the club, what a way for them to learn and do their apprenticeship by having these top pros that have had great careers, gone to World Cups, played in Europe. Okay, this is what you've got to deliver every day.
You mentioned something really interesting in there. You said culture's like building stairs. Could you just pull that apart for us a little bit?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and it's about getting the right people in the organisation through the building, and particularly for me at Macarthur, when I'm bringing in 23 new players, you have to build it. You've got to build that trust. You've got to build that respect that works both ways. But one or two bad situations or wrong characters, then it goes down in a lift. It's broken. And then that gets dragged down with a few others usually. And then if you don't have the players and the staff together pulling in the same direction, I believe you're gone. I'll even go as far to say that your culture and your atmosphere, particularly in Australian football, that could even be worth more than your tactics. Yeah, I'm a big believer in getting that culture, and that comes from your recruitment spot on. That will give you a good chance of success, because if your game plan's unbelievable but your team's not connected, not right, I find it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to succeed and get the results. So that's why building Macarthur was such a big job. And like I said, I'm thankful for those boys that came. And in the end, I had to forego a little bit on my style, but I made up for it with what I had in the change room, and that meant a lot for me.
Could I ask you a little bit about your style? I've seen in interviews where you say you're a little bit stubborn, but I'm wondering how you would describe. Sometimes it's called philosophy or your coaching style.
Yeah, maybe that was slightly misinterpreted, but I understand that. And one interview comes in mind for me, so that first year at Macarthur, most I think we had the most possession, most passes in the opposition book. There was a opposition box. It was an actual heavy dominant possession-based style of keeping the ball. And I remember getting asked a couple of times, well, when the results don't go your way, would you look at playing a more direct brand of football? And there is, I understand the merit to that, and maybe I am stubborn, but I believe so much in the work that I've done and the preparation that I've done that this is the way that's going to bring us results. But in terms of my overall coaching style, particularly with my staff, I'm very, very open to the opinions and to be challenged and to hear their thoughts on what's going on. And I'm open to hearing what others have to say. But in the end, of course, I'll make the captain's call, so to speak, if need be. But particularly go through my experiences when you take over a team, and I had this experience in, I think it was 2018. I took the under 23 team to China, and I was new to that role because the previous coach had left just a month before. I sat down with the coaches, and I wanted to understand their thoughts on how things were run and how they played. And then, of course, I make my own informed decision. But I didn't just come in straight away and say, look, this is the way it's going to be. With certain things that I believe strongly in, yes, of course, it's non-negotiable, because that's who I am and that's what I believe so strongly in. But, always happy to hear what others thinks and their opinion, because you come into an organisation, and on most occasions you're working with people that are, at a good level, and you have to respect what they've done in the past and get an understanding as to why they did it that way. The only thing is, depends in what circumstances you're in, because usually in coaching, time's your enemy. So you got to make those right decisions, and usually make them pretty quick.
Can I talk about taking over from someone in a difficult situation? And that's when you came into the Matildas. You came in there after the sacking of the coach, and I'm wondering what you learned about working with groups when the last leader is left in difficult circumstances.
That was, for many reasons, I learned so much. That was, taking over a job like that in those circumstances were very difficult. I mean, I had never worked in women's football. You're 5 months away from a World Cup where expectations are very high. Their former coach, who also had worked with a lot of those players from their early ages, had left in difficult circumstances, a lot of it unknown. Most people that I spoke to thought that I was crazy for taking such a challenge so close to a major tournament. But the two or three people that I really, really trusted their opinion and that knew me saw it as a fantastic opportunity, and that's the way I approached it as well, because in the end you're coaching your country at a World Cup. It's difficult, it's a challenge, but that's the part that you love as a coach. Rarely do you take over where everything's fine and smooth sailing. And so I knew it was a great opportunity for me. And, I remember the amount of research that I needed to do before even my first camp. And one of the first things I did was, 2 days before camp started, I had 2 days full of meetings where I got every single staff member to present to me their role and their responsibilities. So I wanted to get an understanding of how things were run, from the basics to the more complicated areas. What did a day look like? What did a week look like? Just who was in charge of what and how they did things. So then that way I could then put my stamp on things as quickly as possible. And, I really felt that worked well with the staff. So the first day I got there, I met all the staff, they all presented to me. And then at night, there was a different side of me where, it was a bit more calm and relaxed, and we all went out for dinner. And then, it wasn't so much of a football conversation at the dinner table. And you've got to have that balance as well in coaching. And we speak about that personal connection. A lot of people are interested in your journey and where you've come from and where you live, and to a certain degree your family situation. So there's that other side that I think is important to some more than others, but that was definitely the way I approached that Matilda's job, and I look back at it with huge satisfaction, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. And that job really, really taught me a lot, and again made me a lot more aware of a different side of working and coaching. Because, again, with the national teams, you don't get them every day. You get them for 10 days. They come in, they go. You're dependent a lot on what level they are in their club team when they come in. You've got to be so precise in the amount of information that you're giving them, and are you getting it right? So to take over that quickly, that soon before a World Cup, there was a lot of work that needed to be done, yeah.
Well, this is a busy period in your career, and it wasn't long after this that you resigned from Macarthur. And, there's that great quote, you say, I'm done and I'm on empty. And that is the catalyst that, of course, takes you to where you are today in Croatia. But I wanted to ask you, Ante, what have you, when young coaches come to you now and they talk to you about trying to find some balance and manage their workload, what advice do you give them, knowing what you've gone through, on maintaining their own energy?
Yeah. I can now give you a few examples, because you've got to be in coaching for the right reasons. Okay, so you want to make a difference. You want to help the team. You want to help others. So I resigned from Macarthur, where I had a year to go on my contract. So I forfeited my contract because I was done. I was on empty. So what does I was done and empty look like? So I'd coached for 14 years without a break, and I'd like to think that I go at a pretty solid level. Those last 2 years at Macarthur, there was obviously a lot of disruptions with COVID, and most of us didn't know how to navigate through that period with great confidence. And also at that time, my father passed away, who lived in Croatia, and I just didn't get that closure. Okay, so I wasn't able to go to his funeral. I had to organise it while I was coaching and living in Australia. I watched my dad's funeral on an iPhone, and I knew that at the end of that second season, when I resigned, I just wanted to go to Croatia and take some time away from football. Macarthur were fantastic and said to me, you know what, take 2-3 months off and then, come back and join us when you need to in pre-season. But you can't put a time frame on something like that. So I wanted to go to my father's apartment. I wanted to fix up the grave. I wanted to look at his letters. I wanted to look at his photos, and I didn't know how long that would take. And even when I did resign, I actually got a really good offer from another team to coach, and I declined it because, again, you don't take a job just for the sake of a job. Okay, so if you can't give your maximum, I would rather walk away from it. And you've got to get that balance right. You've got to stay true to the game and show that respect. So that's what I say to young coaches is have that balance right. What you put in has to be at such a high level, because you owe that to the game, to your employee, to your group of players, to your group of staff. And so I walked away because I knew that I couldn't give them the maximum 100% that they deserved. As simple like that. And people thought that, maybe Ante's going through a difficult time and something's not right. Well, no, I just knew that I had nothing more to give. I was on empty, and when I did resign, I spent time in Croatia, and honestly, I had never slept better. I had never eaten better. I've actually started training again, so going to the gym, playing five-a-side soccer. And that's part of it too, because, when you're in coaching, there's no set time for lunch or dinner. You're often skipping meals. You've got the laptop out. You're not around family. You need it. I needed a bit of Ante Milicic time. I needed to put myself first, and even the simple things like having the chance to be around for birthdays or walking my daughter to school. That was all part of my decision, to be honest. So that's where the empty statement came, because that's what I honestly felt. And maybe I was too honest, but that's how I am. That's how I coach. That's how I deal with my players and staff. And I always feel that that's how you have to be. And whether or not people like it or they don't, they have to. I'll always say, you might not accept my decision, but you got to respect it. And that's how I felt at the time. And now I've been out of the game for 18 months, but at the time, that's actually how I honestly felt.
You may have been out of the game, but you're over there in Croatia, and it's a very proud sporting nation. I mean, just if people listening are not aware, it's 4 million people, but when you look at water polo, handball, football, and basketball, they're in the top, the top echelon in the world. And I'm wondering what you've learned from watching the coaches over there that is going to find its way into your own style when you get back into it.
Yeah, well, I think looking over here, it's different, and a lot of people ask me that, like, how is Croatia so successful at so many different sports for such a small population? And it just shows me that there's multiple ways to be successful. Croatia have got ordinary training facilities. Their coaches really have to improvise a lot in the situation and what they have. But when I look, why are they so successful? I put it down to probably a couple of things, and every different country with its culture and its mentality is different. So you look at Croatia, and I think with the kids' upbringing, there's a strong mentality to succeed in sport. They are such mentally strong people, and that obviously has a lot to do as well with what the country's been through. They're very strong, gifted genetically as well, and that definitely, particularly in modern sport, plays a huge part. Their national teams are very, very patriotic, and I always used to find that interesting when I was working in international football tournaments, how teams would sing their national anthems. I still feel that there's something in that. So, you won't see something here in Croatia, and I'll take it to Australia, for example, because we've got better weather, better facilities, we've got better infrastructure, we've got better funding. We're actually in some ways more professional with the way we do our, analysis, our rehab, our medical, everything. But Croatia has a system that works for them, and it won't change. It's the same as when I played here, and now that I'm living here, their system works for them. I think you need to find, as a coach, what works for you. But Croatia, definitely, for the amount of people that it has, they are so, I wouldn't say overachieving, because that's, again, their mentality. They expect to win. They don't play Brazil and think they're underdogs. They're so strong mentally and believe and have that confidence that it's actually a pleasure to watch.
Ante, you've been very generous with your time. So maybe just one last question, if I could. I know that you're potentially not finished with your coaching career. There may be, we were talking before, there may be another gig somewhere along the line, somewhere a bit more sunny perhaps. But when you reflect on the long arc of your career so far, what is it that you hope is the legacy you've left with the people that you've worked with?
The people that I work with, okay, so we touched on a bit, like when you take over a team. I'd like to think that when people come into an organisation or a team that I've worked in, that they see that there's good, processes, and a good culture that have been in place here. And I think that's so important that, your players and staff, I think along our coaching journey, they'll work with so many different coaches of all different levels and from different backgrounds. But if they can see, the genuine work that you put into improving everyone in the organisation, I think, that's for me what means the most.
Ante, it's been terrific chatting with you today. I have thoroughly enjoyed learning a little bit about your history, particularly given the Matilda craze that's been going on, if not in Australia, definitely in my house with my two daughters. But I wish you all the best for Christmas over there in Croatia and for whatever comes next in your coaching career.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate the time, the chat, and wishing everyone all the best for this season forward.
Hi everyone, you have been listening to the great coach Ante Milicic. I hope you got a lot out of Ante's reflective style and found a few ideas that you can bring back to your own team for discussion. When I listened back, some of the key highlights for me were how he talks about his first task when taking over the Matildas was to ask all the staff to present their roles and responsibilities to him, and how this brought a level of calmness to the group. How his time coaching both men and women at the elite level has taught him about the importance of taking time with players as individuals and helping them prepare through either technical or emotional information. And how the feeling that he didn't do enough with the talent he had as a player now shapes the way he works with helping people develop their own mental strength. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Mikey Om, who, after listening to our episode on serial winning coaches, said, "Thanks to Professor Cliff Mallett and Professor Sergio for sharing your truly inspiring insights." We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. It keeps us going. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. And of course, if they're positive ones, well, then let your friends on social media know as well. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.